my name is Madeline and welcome to my channel, Cozy Cottage Chapters. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books I read in the month of December. It is already approaching mid-January and so December feels so far away. I still want to take the time to talk about the books I read in December because it was a pretty good reading month for me. Not only in terms of quantity of books, but also quality. I had 2 5-star reads, and I had a lot of festive, Christmassy kind of books that I was reading. I was just really in the mood for that this year. I am not usually a big Christmas book reader. I might read 1 or 2, but I read a lot this year, and that was really fun for me. Without further ado, let's just get into the books. First up, I was just feeling very, very nostalgic at the start of December. And so I picked up 2 Babysitter Club Christmas books. The first being Babysitter's Christmas Chiller, and then The Secret Life of Mary Ann Spier. These are both set during Christmas time. We have the mystery, which kind of involves some not burglary, breaking and entering, I guess you could say, and vandalism. And then the Mary Ann book, she spends way too much money buying Christmas gifts for everyone, and so she has to take a job at the mall as an elf, like with the Santa picture kind of thing that's happening. And she doesn't tell anybody that she's an elf because she's embarrassed, and she's trying to like keep this secret from her family and her friends. Both of these just gave me flashbacks to my childhood. I loved the Babysitter's Club books so much when I was growing up, and it just reminded me of all of these things that I had forgotten about them, and it was just a really kind of sweet way to kick off the month. I read each of these books, I think, in a day, and that was really, really fun to kind of like kickstart the month of December. Then I read a short story at Thompson Hall by Anthony Trollope. I don't want to say too much about this because it's a short story, so like you can't talk very much about it without giving things away. But basically we're following this couple who are English, but they're living in France, and they are going back to the woman's kind of ancestral family home to celebrate Christmas, Thompson Hall. And most of the story takes place in this hotel that they're spending the night in Paris, I believe, before they, make their way to England. And some awkward circumstances arise, and it is like very cringy and awkward to read about. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm not a huge short story fan, so I feel like that kind of clouds my opinions of them. I don't typically enjoy short stories very much, but I am interested in reading more Anthony Trollope. This was my first piece by him that I read, and it's kind of maybe a strange starting point, but I feel happy that I was able to dip my toes a little bit into the writing of Anthony Trollope, and he's definitely an author I want to read more of. I just feel so intimidated because he has so many books and series that it feels kind of overwhelming to jump in. So I was happy to have kind of a short story be my entry point into Anthony Trollope. The classic that I read, finished in December, I had started it way back in October, and that is of course Dombey and Son by Charles Dickens. I have a whole video dedicated to 10 things that I love about this book, and I will leave it linked below because I just talk all about Dombey and Son, so I won't talk about it much here, but suffice it to say, I loved this book so much. I gave it 5 stars, very, very easy 5 stars, and it's been, over a month now since I finished Dombey and Son, and I still think about it. I still think about the characters and the story, and I think it's just a book that's really going to stick with me. Although it's not like set around Christmas time, I still felt it was very Christmassy. Like the ending is just so good and just wraps everything up together and is just so beautiful. So it felt like a good Christmas time read, even though it's not set in Christmas. Now for something a little bit different. I was and still am in a really big historical fantasy mood. I don't read a lot of fantasy. I sometimes have trouble really getting into fantasy if I'm not really in the mood for that, but I do tend to really enjoy historical fantasy, something just about a setting and characters that I already know a little bit about or am somewhat familiar with. I just find it so much easier to enjoy those kinds of books. So anyway, I read Romanov by Nadine Brands, and this is historical fantasy that centers around the Romanov family. Obviously, the book starts off, they have been sent into exile, and we're mainly following Nastia, or Anastasia. We also get to see, you know, her siblings and her parents and all of that. Most of the book takes place during their exile, their time living in this house, and we see the friendships and relationships that begin to form between the Romanov family and the guards. There's also some magic involved. The fantasy element is not very strong in this book, which I really enjoyed. Some people might not like that, might want more fantasy from it, but I did not mind that the fantasy felt very light. But there is this magical Russian nesting doll kind of thing, and it plays a very crucial part in the storyline. I really enjoyed this book. The writing is so beautiful, and I loved kind of the virtues of the Romanov family, how it was portrayed, how kind and forgiving they were, especially of the people who were keeping them captive. Their ability to just forgive in these really hard circumstances was really, really beautiful. With that being said, I do think this book maybe leaned heavily towards a positive portrayal of the Romanov family. Obviously, it's a very complex issue that I probably don't know enough about to speak on, but I just feel like they were such perfect characters. They didn't really have many flaws. Nastia, her only flaw really was that she plays practical jokes on people, but even that was kind of presented as this quirky, you know, character trait and not something that was actually harmful or hurting people. And her father was also just portrayed as just being kind of this perfect person above any sort of blame or responsibility for some of the hard things that were happening during his reign, I guess you could say. Like I said, I don't know very much about Russian history, but even still, I felt like it was maybe too positive of a portrayal. Even when the soldiers who were guarding the family would, you know, say critical things about the Romanov family, the Romanovs would respond and be like, oh, that's just propaganda, that's not real. Which I felt was so strange. That they couldn't just recognize that, no, these people really are suffering and are very poor and are, you know, not making it up. So I don't know. I just thought it would have been an even better book if the characters were portrayed in more of a nuanced way and we got to see kind of that wrestling with their virtues and how kind and forgiving they could be, but also the reality of kind of what was going on and the role that they played, either directly or indirectly, in that. So anyways, that's Romanov. I really, really enjoyed it though. I think I gave it 4 stars, and kind of that whole character issue was what prevented me from this being a 5-star book, because otherwise it could just transported immediately into it and really, really enjoyed it. A perfect winter time read for sure. Right, another Christmassy book, and that is The Vanderbeekers of 141st Street by Karina and Glaser. This is a middle grade book. We follow a family of 5 siblings. Yes, 5 siblings. It is right before Christmas, and they have just found out that their landlord is not going to renew their lease for unknown reasons. And the Vanderbeeker children band together and decide that they are going to convince this grumpy landlord to let them stay in their home because they love their home, they love their community, and they just can't imagine life not on 141st Street. So the kids get up to lots of ideas of trying to show their landlord how great they are, and it's just such a sweet book. I loved the sibling relationships in here. I loved the sense of community. The side characters were a lot of fun in this book as well. It definitely has a idealistic, a romantic portrayal of life in a city. This takes place in New York City, in Harlem, and obviously I've never lived there, but I have lived in cities, and it's not always as beautiful and lovely as this makes it out to be, but I really did not mind that at all. I actually loved it for that. Like, I just wanted everything to be beautiful and perfect, and you know, the movie version of New York City where everything is clean and wonderful, and you have these happy neighbors who talk to you on the street when you leave your house, and you know, not the reality of like grumpy, dirty city life. But anyways, this is a series. I'm really excited to continue in the series. I gave it 5 stars. I blew through it. There are some cute little illustrations as well. Let me see if I can find them. So there's some little drawings of like their home and their street and their neighborhood. Yeah, I just love this book so much. It was so sweet, so lovely, wholesome, very, very good. I also read Hercule Poirot's Christmas by Agatha Christie. This is obviously a mystery involving Poirot, and I really enjoyed this. This is a locked room mystery where we are following this family who the father has converged all of his children together, and there is some family secrets at play. He's kind of this really eccentric old man, and I really, really liked this. I saw some things coming, but was surprised by a lot, which is usually the case for me when reading Agatha Christie. This definitely ranks among my top tier of Agatha Christie books. I really enjoyed it and found it very quick to read through. Another shorter book I have is A Holiday by Gaslight by Mimi Matthews. This is a Victorian historical romance novella. And there were a lot of things that I enjoyed about this book, but I think this kind of solidified for me that I'm not a huge fan of short stories / novellas. I need more time with the character. I need more development. I'm not ready for a story to be over that quickly. But anyways, we are following this young woman who her father is just absolutely terrible. I really, really disliked her father so much because he is just blowing through money like it's nobody's business, and he has spent his oldest daughter's dowry in, you know, some refurbishment construction work on their family estate because he thinks they need to just, you know, make everything super nice, have all of these new luxuries that they can't necessarily afford, but he's determined that this is important, and we need to outfit the house with gaslight, we need to have indoor plumbing, all of these things. And so the daughter is kind of in a precarious situation. She's very aware of what's going on and how bad the situation is, and so she knows that she needs to marry someone who is wealthy so that she can help kind of offset all of these expenses that her father is incurring. And she is sort of, you know, spending time with this man who is very wealthy, but he's new money, and so he doesn't really have kind of the social standing that her family has, even though her family does not have as much money as he does. But anyways, she kind of calls things off in the beginning, then comes back and is like, oh, maybe I should, you know, see if I can make this work because my family's in a really desperate situation. And they spend Christmas together at her family's home. And, you know, the story unfolds from there. Like I said, I think I just don't really jive well with novellas or short stories, especially when it's a romance. I really want to see the characters slowly over time falling in love with each other, and it feels a little bit rushed when it's just condensed into that format. But like I said, I did enjoy this story. It was fun, it was interesting. I loved kind of the historical elements about Gaslight and kind of the effect of that, because I didn't know very much about that. I will be wanting to read more by Mimi Matthews. I think this is an author I could really enjoy. Maybe just her longer, full novels. I read Last Christmas in Paris. This is by Hazel, Gaynor, and Heather Webb. And this is a fully epistolary novel. It's letters sent back and forth, primarily between two characters, but there are some other things included. We are following this girl, what is her name? We are following Evie and Thomas as they're exchanging letters. Evie is Thomas's best friend's sister. And so when he goes off to war, she is sending letters kind of to encourage him. He doesn't have many other people in his life to communicate with, so she's kind of taken it upon herself to be there for him and try to, you know, encourage him as he has gone off to war. This is World War I historical fiction. I probably should have said that. But anyways, this is set during World War I. We're following them throughout the war. They're exchanging letters. There's, you know, all of this hardship and hard things going on. They obviously start to fall in love with each other. I had a hard time with this book. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. I'm clearly in the minority because most people love this, gave it 5 stars. But Evie, our female protagonist, just drove me absolutely crazy. She felt so immature at times. There's one part where, I don't think this is too spoilery, but you can skip ahead if you don't want to know, where Thomas has gone missing, I guess, and Evie is sending him letters. She's getting no response back. So, like, obviously you could assume he's in war, like maybe something has happened. He's not probably just ignoring your letters. But anyways, she sends him kind of one last letter because she is starting to realize that she has feelings for him. She sends him this, you know, letter where she's pouring her heart out to him, telling him how she feels, and she hears nothing back in response. Obviously, you could assume maybe something has happened to the poor man. But instead, when she finally does hear back from him, she's like, oh, he just doesn't want to talk about, you know, my feelings or whatever. He doesn't want to acknowledge what I've laid out in this letter. And it just felt so ridiculous to me. Like, maybe the letter got lost. Maybe he, you know, doesn't remember the letter. Like, obviously there's so many things that could have happened, and instead of just being an adult and saying, hey, did you get my letter where I told you I loved you? And like talking to him about it, she just completely brushes it away and is like, oh, well, I guess we can't talk about it, and just kind of moves on, which felt so strange to me. Like, I feel like so many problems in this book could have been resolved if they were just more honest with each other, which was so funny because they were talking about how honest we are in our letters and how the war just makes you say things directly and not hold things back, but yet they were holding things back the whole time. So I don't know, there were other kind of little problems that I had with this book that just felt very strange, the way the characters were acting, and just kind of took me out of the story a bit too much. But anyways, I gave it 3.5 stars. I think I said that. And yeah, it was kind of a bummer for me. And I have another mystery, this time short story collection. I was really in a mystery mood in December, and that is The Mistletoe Murder and Other Stories by P.D. James. This was on my TBR, so I did a good job of reading from my TBR this month. This was my first work by P.D. James. I really enjoyed it. It is short stories, but I feel like I jived a little bit better with the mystery short stories than other genres. And maybe that's because I don't really feel the need to connect with characters in a mystery. I can just enjoy it for the plot. I don't need to really enjoy the characters in the story. Whereas that's the case for other genres, I feel. So maybe that's why I enjoyed these more. I gave The Mistletoe Murder 4 stars, A Very Commonplace Murder 3 stars, and then the last two, The Boxdale Inheritance and The 12 Clues of Christmas, 4 stars. My favorite is definitely The Mistletoe Murder. There's some fun, kind of bookish things going on in this story, which makes it fun for a reader. Yeah, I listened to this on audiobook and enjoyed that as well. The first two stories are narrated by a woman and the last two are narrated by a man, which was interesting. I think I preferred the woman's narration. Like I said, I think I will definitely want to read more P.D. James in the future. She has a number of novels that center around the detective in the last, was it the last 2 stories or just the last one? Now I can't remember. But he makes an appearance in this, I think the last 2 stories. So it would be fun to pick up some of those novels and get to know him a little bit better. And last up is A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I wasn't necessarily planning on reading this Christmas, but I picked it up when I was in the US on my birthday, so right after Christmas, and started reading it, and I really enjoyed it. Obviously, everyone kind of knows the story of A Christmas Carol, but I still think it's such a good book to read. Even if you know the story, you should read the actual book because it's so good. It's just a very short little book. My copy is just 100 pages or so, 125 pages. So it goes by really quickly, but it sets the mood so well for Christmas time, and it's just such a charming, cozy little read. This is also on my 30 before 30 list, so I am pretty excited that at the end of 2024 I was able to cross one book already off of that list, and I can definitely see this being a tradition of a book I want to read every Christmas. So very, very happy that I read this. Alright, that is it for the books I read in the month of December. Like I said, it was a really good reading month. I had quite an eclectic mix of things as usual. Let me know if you read any excellent books in December, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye!